Fisherman's tan season has fully started, and that means dry fly fishing is well underway. Flies are hatching off, fish are feeding on the surface or just under the surface, and dry flies are often the only way you can catch those fish. This is how I'm going to get into, quite frankly, the most technically challenging type of fly fishing, that is dry fly fishing, and what I like to do to set myself up for the best success. So if you struggle with dry fly fishing, this video is for you. And if you just want to chat about dry fly fishing in general, come and have a chat with me. Let me know what you think about dry flies in general. Let's get into it. So first of all, let's talk about what a dry fly is. A dry fly is when, as we've talked about in other videos, an insect of many different types, not just buzzers, is hatching off of the surface or landing onto the surface. So it's trapped in the surface film. The water tension is at its highest right at the top of the water, and flies get trapped in there, effectively making a dinner plate for trout. They cruise around under the surface, looking upwards. Trout are always looking up in a cone shape around them. And as they look up, they're searching for dry flies, especially those fish that have gotten in the habit of eating dry flies. That's why we tend to have fish that have been in the water a little while eating dry flies as opposed to fresh stocked fish. They will take dry flies, but they're not in a constant feeding habit of eating dry flies. So that's one interesting thing. We're generally targeting fish that have been in the water a little while and aren't reacting to freshly stocked fish's usual behavior, which is attacking aggressively lures and stuff like that. They'll of course do that, but dry flies is a key way to target these guys. Now, when fishing dry flies, we want to try and keep our flies on the surface as long as possible. That's how we're going to be able to actually present our flies in that manner. Now, whether it is a subsurface emerging fly or a fly that's on top, that can be challenging to keep our flies on the surface. So here's how I like to do it. Flies with deer hair or CDC or some sort of synthetic material that basically trap air inside itself to keep on the surface of the water, you can apply different materials to them to make them more floating. And I like to use either gink or mucilin. They are my two favorite ways to keep the fly floating and able to keep air inside itself so that it doesn't sink. Now, CDC is one of my favorite materials to use. Quite frankly, the vast majority of my dry flies have CDC, whether it's an emerging pattern like a yellow owl or a Calde in general. That's generally a really good emerging pattern that it can kind of imitate the stage between a buzzer hatching and a buzzer becoming an adult. It imitates that whole, even when the buzzer cases are spent and they're on the top of the water, it also imitates that, so it can cover a lot of ranges. When we're using CDC, too much gink and mucilin can sink them as well. So we need to just be quite gentle in general with dry flies. That's our first rule. Being gentle is normally a good rule of thumb when casting them, when applying materials to them, with our leader set up. Gentle is a good mindset to have with dry flies. Even striking at the fish, you don't want to rip your flies off the surface. It's not like fishing the bum. You need to have a little grace and decorum when striking at the fish on a dry fly. You want to try and time it as well as possible so the fish has fully taken your fly as opposed to just tentatively taking your fly. So that's our first lesson, gentleness in general. Next, I'm going to talk about the choice of dry flies. So what I like to do is try and look at what's on the water at any one time. So if fish are rising around me, if there's olive flies hatching off, if you can try and catch one or even see the cases in the top of the water, if there is a specific color, then that's great. Try and match the color, the size, and the shape of the fly. They're like the three rules that I tend to try and follow. So if you match the color, the size, and the shape, then you'll generally be in the right silhouette and color for the fish. Because, to be honest, fish will have a whack at anything. If they're in a really, really picky mood, that's different. But the vast majority of the time, if you get the size, the shape, and the color in that order correct, fish will be having a look at your fly. So that's the first thing I like to try and do, is get the dry flies correct in terms of their size, shape, and color. I'll have multiple on a cast, but we'll come next to how I like to set up my rig and what dry fly fishing rig is the best in different scenarios. So a dry fly fishing rig can be set up in many different ways. If I'm fishing a small water that has many fish in a small packed in area and a lot of people fishing for them in a small area, I actually like to fish one dry fly, a single dry fly. I've had in other videos where I've fished nymphs with a dry fly. I don't mind that. But if these fish are being slightly picky or I'm targeting fish in general, one dry fly tends to do quite well. I think that I get more confident takes on a longish leader from 12 feet and above with one dry fly. It's easy to cast, easy to turn over, very easy to fish, easy to see. That in general is quite a good setup for small waters, one dry fly. Now, when setting up your leader, however, one key thing is to use something like muck or mucilin, and that can actually sink your leader straight away. So as soon as you've cast out, your dry fly lands perfectly. And if your leader is sitting on the surface of the water, massive turn off for fish looking up. It's almost like a silver bar sitting on the surface because it traps air next to it. So when your leader is sitting there, even though it's invisible under the water, on top of the water, it's so visible, it's unbelievable. So a massive tip is making sure that your leader doesn't have any shine. And how to do that is by applying some sort of mud or sinking mucilin, which is very easy to do. You can just wet your line, either in your mouth or in the water, and run across a very thin layer of mud. And now make sure that it goes all the way up to where your knot is, to your fly. And that now has eliminated that shine. It's a really key rule. And if that's not applied, you'll probably get 10, out of every 10 fish that look at your fly, only one will have a look at your fly because of that shine on your leader. So that's a really big key rule for dry fly fishing. Now, other rigs, the rigs that I use more often, quite frankly, is on a 3 fly cast. I'll have either 2 dry flies, one on the top dropper, about 6 to 10 feet from your main line, a nymph in the middle, or even a subsurface emerger, and a dry fly on the point. So 2 dry flies with a nymph in the middle. And now the same rule applies for using muck or anything that's a degreaser of your fly line. I'll do that to the entire cast because it's still sitting up in the water column very much. You've got those 2 dries and a nymph that's like slowly sinking, bringing the 2 dries together, or just sitting there in the water column. The degreaser is still key, absolutely key. So I would definitely apply that in all of these scenarios, and is quite frankly a basic rule. Apart from the 2 dry fly setup, I would also use 3 dry flies quite often. Being able to go 1, 2, 3 dry flies back to back to back is a fantastic way to be able to fish dries, and it's quite often a really good way to fish dries when you're just covering open water, not necessarily targeting fish, because these fish are just cruising around like we said, looking in their cone. And if fishing 3 dry flies increases your chances of being able to get in front of those fish, that's a big deal. So that's my favorite rigs, setup, quick tips, and choices of flies for dry fly fishing. And if you follow those rules, I don't doubt that you'll be able to improve your dry fly fishing. Let's have a chat in the comments about what your favorite dry fly is in general, and if you think there's any really key tips that I've missed out in terms of dry fly fishing here. Let's have a chat, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Tight lines. Now, if you want to grab yourself any of the flies in this video, or any other fly tying and fly fishing materials, go and check out My Fishing Flies in Grangemouth, or on their website, myfishingflies.com. They have loads of stuff from loads of flies, everything you could ever need. Go and check them out. Really high quality stuff, and Dale and Tracy are lovely. They'll help you out. Thanks, guys.